one of those things as a child, everybody wants to be a firefighter. Kids growing up, they want to be firefighters, policemen, or what have you. Funny thing is, when I was a kid, I still remember to this day, there was a series on Little House on the Prairie back in the day of when there was a large fire, when people were killed in one of the homes and that, which really upset me as a kid. And it was from that it just kept growing, and I kept wanting to make a difference. So it was one of those things I kept looking at and that, and then in '95, I joined the fire department here in Sprucedale, and been here ever since, and assisting, and I've taught at the Ontario Fowler College, as well as I've taught at other municipalities in their fire departments as well as their training officers. So it is a calling for some people, that it just becomes a way of life. So it was a joke at one time that my wife and I met, that the only way she could see me was to join the fire department, because I was never home. And so, which she did, and she was a member for about 3 or 4 years as well within family, and that, because it takes a huge draw on everything at home. So she stepped away from it. I remained with the fire service, but it's still one of those things where it gets in your blood and you can't get it out. I prefer not to use the term volunteer anymore. Part-time professional would be a better way of looking at it, for the simple fact that firefighters now, more now than anything with the change in the legislation and in what we have to achieve and meet the Ontario Fire Marshal standards for certification, firefighters have to put in hundreds of hours now on top of their full-time job, on top of their home life and everything else. So, and I don't think people really appreciate the commitment that a volunteer or part-time professional firefighter makes, and the sacrifices they have to make in order to hold that position and be able to be there to help someone. And really, when you look at it, volunteers, they're not paid very well at all. Some municipalities don't pay at all, but these are people that live in your town, live in your municipality, that want to be there when you have a problem and want to be there to help you in your time of need. And they will drop what they're doing, Christmas dinners, anniversaries, birthdays. They're leaving their families and they're coming out to your emergency. So, and a lot of times what gets forgotten as well is the wife or the partner or spouse that's at home, and the support that is behind that volunteer to be able to do that thing, and the understanding, because if you don't have a good support structure at home, you're not going to be able to do it and be comfortable in what you're doing.
What kind of jobs do your volunteers have outside of the fire department?
Absolutely anything you can imagine, from factory workers to construction workers to home-based businesses, everything under the sun. It's whatever their full-time career is that they've chosen. And some careers work better than others. Something I've noticed in the past few years is employers are more and more reluctant to allow a volunteer to leave during their work shift to respond to a call if they happen to work and live in the municipality where they're a volunteer. Employers have become more reluctant to let them go now, which has become a bit of a challenge, especially during daytime calls, when the majority of people are at work or out of town at work and that sort of thing. There's more demand in the job market, so they've hired you, they want you there and doing your shift, which I can understand. So it's a tricky little spot to try and figure out.
Fair enough, but what if you have a major incident, God forbid?
Major incident, if your employer won't let you leave, you can't leave, because you don't want to jeopardize your paying job that's paying your bills at home for one incident that you're not being paid very well at all to attend. So that's why one of the things that was implemented in this area was the 5-municipality emergency response automatic aid, where 5 stations are being dispatched to a major incident, so that we're able to hopefully have enough people show up out of the 5 stations to be able to handle the incident when there's people missing or at work or not able to attend.
And what is the impact or potential impact on the public?
If we were not part of an automatic aid system, the impact would be major, especially for our municipality here in Sprucedale, in McMurrich, Monteith. Simply because during the day we have myself, that I'm here, I'm a paid position, I'm here full-time. Everyone else is volunteer and everyone else works. So at any given time I could be the only one in town that's able to respond to a call. If we weren't part of the automatic aid system, that would severely impact, because then I would start having to call for assistance from other stations, which loses time where the automatic aid are automatically paged out. So they actually receive, in the 5 municipalities, these municipalities are receiving the best fire coverage possible having a volunteer service, because even if I was away or if someone else was away, we end up having chief officers and firefighters from other municipalities here handling the situation as if it was their own. So it works very well that way. And so it was the best option we could come up with to make sure there was adequate coverage for anything.
What happens when that call comes, you guys know you're needed?
I always call it the switch. The switch flips and you go into response mode, first responder mode. So, and that's why we train as much as we do. So when the tones drop, we are ready. We're already thinking about what we need to be doing. It's one of those things where you need to be able to react precisely and efficiently and safely without having to think about it. So you're automatically, for myself, when the tones go off, it's what vehicles am I going to need? Who do I have available right now? Am I going to require further resources to assist on this call? And making sure that we have sufficient means to deal with whatever situation it is. Also, you're trying to think in your head before you arrive on scene. If it's a motor vehicle accident, what could we be rolling into? What kind of situation are we going to deal with? If it's a fire, what kind of fire are we dealing with? How are we going to attack this fire? You know, we always say when people call in an emergency, they call 911, and then they have to sit and wait for us to arrive, which it seems like an eternity. When I'm here at the station already and the tones drop and we have a call, it seems like forever before my responders even get to the hall to go. It's not, but it feels like an eternity waiting for them to come. So it's, we have arrived on scenes where we don't have enough people, or we arrive on a scene where the call came and it was something minor and it ends up not being something minor. And then you have to immediately switch the way you were thinking and make decisions on the fly on how you're going to deal with this situation and what's the safest way to accomplish what we need to accomplish without causing any issues down the road. So it can be very, very interesting. And the biggest part is that when we arrive, the person that's called is looking for us to be calm, collect, and know what we're doing. Even though we may be in utter panic mode in our heads, you'll never see it from us, because our training shows us how to deal with it, how to handle the situation, what to do, what not to do. And then once we get back to the hall, we'll sit down and talk about what could we have done different in that. And that's when you take a deep breath and go, wow, that was something else. Fires, medical calls, accidents, all, it doesn't care if you're full-time or if you're volunteer. It doesn't matter. The severity of the call, it doesn't matter. The guys that are full-time are able to go back to the station, take a breath, have their debrief right then, you know, deal with it. They have things in place to help them with all that. Volunteers, you can be at a motor vehicle accident, a horrendous motor vehicle accident, and you know, you hear the screaming, you hear the yelling and all that. You've dealt with the call, you go home, and you got to get up to go back to work, and that is still going in your head. You can still hear the screaming and the yelling and such. PTSD, it's a term that gets widely used and overused, but mental health of firefighters, especially volunteers that are trying to balance all of this, it's not all that they do, I feel is a little more hard on them, because it's something they're trying to, you know, you don't want to take this home to your family. You don't want to go on this call, see all this, and then go home and take it with you. You try and leave it at the station. which is mentally taxing on a volunteer. There are programs in place that we make available to all our volunteers. Every chief in the stations around here, make sure we follow up with our volunteers after a significant call to see how they're doing. We call around, we check on them constantly and that sort of thing. But it's one of those things when you're a volunteer, whatever you've dealt with that night just before work or on your way home or that, you don't leave it at the scene. It'll follow you for a long time. And even sometimes, once you have dealt with it yourself and you feel like you're all good, that a smell, a sound, anything will trigger it and you're right back to where that day happening that moment. So it can be incredibly hard on people. So it's the end of it that we don't like to talk about, the end of things that, you don't like that end of it. But the mental taxation on the person. Heard it put one time that you have a cup and when your cup gets full and it spills over, that's in it. So you have to find a way to empty that cup. And some guys are really good at it. Some other folks, they have trouble with it. And we do a probationary period with all the members that join, and we say, it's a chance for you to see if you can actually do this. And there's no shame if they can't. It's not for everyone. It's not just jumping in the truck and riding with the sirens and the lights and everything going. You're going to see things that the average person would maybe never see in their entire life, except for on a television show. And seeing it on television is nothing compared to hands-on. You're there, you're the one with your hands covered in blood. You're the one listening to the screams. You're the one trying to figure out how am I going to get this person out and save them before it's too late. So it's extremely hard, and it's hard to leave behind. So it's that end of stuff that, first responders, we have a very dark sense of humor. And we've often said that if the general public heard some of the jokes we make, they'd be horrified. It's our way of dealing. It's our way of releasing and getting through it and making it easier to cope with. The other thing as well is the adrenaline. When the tones drop, there's an immediate adrenaline release in the system. It just happens. And when we go out on a call, if we have that adrenaline release, we respond and then we are stood down because we're no longer needed. We have to burn off that adrenaline. And that's something that a study's been done in the fire service, is that adrenaline release, that if we don't find a way to burn that off, it becomes a physical problem in firefighters because they have that release. And then, we always joke, we went at a call at 1 in the morning. I didn't have to be at work till 8. We were back by 2. Couldn't go back to sleep. You're wide awake because you have that adrenaline going through your system. So it's mentally and physically taxing on firefighters to deal with that sort of thing.
Really pleased and excited to announce that the new presumptive WSIB cancer coverage for all firefighters in our province takes effect. So we're expanding cancer coverage for all firefighters, full-time, part-time, volunteer fire departments, First Nations, as well as fire investigators. We have expanded it to include thyroid and pancreatic cancer. We're also making it retroactive to January 1st, 1960. I want to just say on behalf of Premier Ford, our entire government, to every firefighter out there and to their families, thank you for your service to our communities, to our families, and to our province.
What do you want the public to know about what the profession is and what you go through and how you feel at the end of the day?
I'd like them to appreciate the sacrifice that these people are making to be there for when they need us. This is what they do to help their community, to support the community, and be there when someone actually needs the assistance. It's without them we'd be lost. Our call volume for the number of calls we have in a year. Last year at this time we had 54 calls. This year we've had 83 calls. We're up 54% in call volume. Our team is rallying to it unbelievably. They are doing super good. And you find, even though it's not a full-time place where people live and sleep and eat together, there does become a bond between the firefighters. It becomes an extended family. And I feel that without that in the fire service and without that in the fire station, that you can't have an effective station, because these guys rely on each other to get through everything and anything.
Any regrets?
No regrets. I wouldn't change it for the world. That's becoming, everybody says, so what do you think now? You're full-time, full-time chief. It's the best job in the world. I wouldn't change it for anything. I love being there when someone needs you, and the rest of the time I'm doing paperwork, which isn't my favorite, but it's, I wouldn't change it for the world. Being there when someone needs you to be there, when someone doesn't know what to do, when you're life or death situation. And all of the members here, we want to be there, we want to help, we want to do everything we can, and there's no regrets out of anyone for doing it.